All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the end of the world with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu. And today we are back to continue our mini-series on a very brief even, history of the afterlife.
Mm.
Last time we opened things up by talking about Albert Brooks's film, obviously, which pleased some members of our audience. I got a lot of positive feedback on that, which is always nice.
Good.
And if you too would like to give positive feedback, you can by liking and subscribing to us on the podcatcher of your choice, and perhaps even telling a friend about the show, or leaving a rating and or review on said podcatcher.
You could follow us on Instagram at the end of the world WMS.
Why yes, you could do that.
But this week, right, we're going all the way back.
Yeah, we're dialing the clock back to the time
as far as it goes.
The time before clocks. Well before clocks.
The time before clocks. Yes, that's
right. Millennia before clocks, even.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, to the listeners, the next few weeks they're built on a bunch of historical research, and so you can imagine these are going to be what we call stew-heavy episodes. However, before we do get started and head directly into Stu's wheelhouse, I did want to ask a hypothetical question of Stu. To just talk about the afterlife in general for a little bit before we.
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay, so this is one that I have thought about for most of my life, and I don't know what your view of dying was as you got were younger and whatever. But one of the things that I've sort of developed at a very young age, and has stuck with me, is okay. So we don't know if there's an afterlife, right? We both agree on that.
So far, we don't, confirmation needed.
You don't know that there is, and you don't know that there's not. That's fair, right?
Sure.
If you had to guess, you would guess what?
Not.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I think I would, I don't know what I would guess. I think I might guess yes, actually.
Okay.
Feels like there's nothing at stake if the gun's to my head and I say no, and then I'm right. So, if belief at all is a condition for anything, I may as well throw it out there at the last. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like a Pascal's wager situation, right?
Okay. Right. Okay. So the hypothetical is this: forget everything that we've learned about the conventions of how to get in or what it might be and all of that. Right. Let's just say that you get confirmation that there is an afterlife. Okay? Some irrefutable source comes to you, shows you that there is an afterlife. However, this is the key. This is one of the key parts.
You know what it would be for me too, right? It would be like the ghost of Da Vinci would be like.
Yes, that's right. That's
my old enemy.
Yes, or all of them. Da Vinci and Franklin come visit you on the same night. You're like, you got to be kidding me.
This is sort of Scrooge, an Ebenezer Scrooge scenario for me.
Right. The ghosts of fraudulent genius past, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So you are told this. This is the one guarantee you have, is that there is an afterlife. Now, here's the twist on the hypothetical, okay? You are not allowed to know what it is. So it could be anything from bliss at a level completely inconceivable to you right now, to the most painful, consistent, ceaseless, relentless torture that you also couldn't even conceive of right now, right? And within that, any range from your standard, your bog standard hell to What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, like whatever little thing it's all possible. The condition is for you to be able to go in for eternity, for the afterlife.
Yeah.
You have to do two things. One, you have to go right then. Okay. You have to leave right now. Like from where you're sitting,
leaving on a jet plane.
You don't get to get on your phone. Even your trusty pod co-host logs on.
So I just vanish. Right? There's like
you're gone right now. In order to make it slightly more palatable, although you would go, there would be some sort of construct that would make it easier for your family to digest. So that could be anything. A mirage, an illusion of you exists through a healthy life on Earth.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So like anything that makes it so that like your parents aren't like grieving you forever, like leftovers.
And there aren't like podcasts about my disappearance or whatever.
No, like in fact, let's even say for the purpose of the hypothetical, you an avatar of Stu that Michael Terry even, who's with you every week,
and is indistinguishable. Okay.
Right? No one can distinguish. They all love you the same. Your family loves you. You get a traditional burial if you want one. Maybe you get cremated, however you want to go when it's finally done. But there's people, you have a great life at the end. People are there to support you, all of that. Now, however, you have gone. You have vanished. You have to choose right now.
This is very elaborate. I love it.
Yes. Yes. To stop experiencing everything that this plane has to offer you. And the second part of the hypothetical is you are not given any information about what awaits you.
Okay, but if I just if I say no and then die normally, there's no afterlife.
That's correct?
That's the implication.
Yes.
Well, then I think you got to say yes, right? You got to go.
I mean, to me, there's no doubt. But I will tell you, I've asked this question of many, many people.
Right.
I also have a hypothetical sort of the same about outer space. Right? If aliens came and you could lift you out, very few people, in my experience, say yes to this.
Really?
Now, I think maybe the Avatar thing softens it a little bit, right? But you would be aware that you'd be placing your parents, although they would genuinely be acting towards Stu the Avatar as Stu. You would, and
Stu the Avatar wouldn't be messing up. He'd be fine.
No, he wouldn't even be, I think, for purposes of this, like conscious of the fact that he's not Stu.
Okay.
Right?
Well, now we're getting into like a Star Trek transporter. Like, does the transporter kill you and make a copy of you?
I guess what stuns me when I ask this, and I would say it's probably something like at least like 9 out of 10 are saying they would stay.
Really?
Right?
90%.
Things like, and I've never done the Avatar thing before, so I guess disappearing.
This is a new wrinkle.
Let's say you had to disappear completely. What would you do?
Same conditions otherwise.
Except everyone's like, where is Stu?
Like, what happened?
Yeah, what happened? I would still go.
I think you still got to go, right? I mean,
we're talking about like, there's a few factors here, right? To me,
sure.
It's like, one, you have to imagine that there is, again, just from a betting perspective, that there's a reasonable chance that what follows is better, right?
Well, it's also just like, different, probably.
And then it's different, and it's eternal, right?
Oh, it's eternal.
Oh, yeah, like it's an afterlife.
Right, but we don't know if it's not just one of many stages, right?
That's right. So anything can unfold, but what you do know is that, like, you've saved your consciousness for all time.
Sure. Well, at least until the next stage.
Right. Who knows what would happen to you? Yes, I give you that. However, the flip side of it, which I don't think people ever, it's like, people complain about being here all the time. The work, all the time. You have to go to school, you do homework, you have to go to summer school, you have to go to camp. Everything's annoying.
You've got a job.
My God,
right.
My computer's not working. Now I got to write my essay.
Oh, I'm not getting a raise again.
Yes. Everything. Oh my God. I just put 40 years into a corporation for nothing. And my life is so unfulfilling. And now I say things like, all that matters is family, and my family hates me too. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like most people are going through that type of run,
Yeah.
And yet when you confront them with like, okay, you're going to have to make this wager.
Here's a one-way ticket to the next stage.
Whereas I feel, and I don't mean this in any truly like dark nihilistic way. Like, I feel like I've seen enough. Like, and I love people and all that stuff, and I enjoy the people I'm with, and I love my family.
Sure.
I love watching soccer. That's a thing I love. But like, I have seen so many soccer games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That the idea of like, no, I have to stick around in case like United finally win the league again. But it does surprise me. What do you think that is? Because from my field research, which is I've asked at least 100 people this question.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
You've never asked me before. I'm insulted.
Yeah, well, that is but like, I think I'm too intimidated by your philosophical nous. Like I'm just a little intimidated by how you might answer.
Well, that's silly.
Maybe it's because I'm worried that you would shift my assumptions, and I'm not ready for it because I'm so like.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored that you would think that, but it's foolish.
given that you have said yes, which I do think is the only answer, because I think that, so this is the other thing that I said, particularly about the outer space one, but it applies here too, which is that after you say no, you know that you've
Yeah,
said no.
you got to live with that dread.
And to me, it's like, dude, you think you hated a traffic jam before you turned down the chance at eternal bliss?
Or
You're not
damnation.
driving around Atlanta next year and being like anything other than like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Have you been driven in Atlanta? The traffic is just, I mean, the traffic is
I
just
have
horrific.
once, very briefly. Not good.
Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit of that
Too many
movie.
cars for the highway system. It's kind of like Austin.
Oh, I've never been to Austin. You ever see that movie, The Last Starfighter?
No.
It's like a post Star Wars sci-fi movie, early '80s. Pretty good, really good early computer graphics, but it has this exact scenario in it, except the space version, where the kid sets a new high score on a like arcade game, and a guy rolls up in a limo and is like, "Hey, you just you did it, like you've won,
Mm-hmm.
get in." And then the limo turns into a spaceship and they fly into space. And while he's in space, they leave behind a doppelganger of him that lives his
I
life
see.
and looks
Okay.
exactly like him, but is kind of janky. It's kind of messes things up a little bit. Not a great movie, a fun movie. I've been wanting to re-see it for forever, and I finally was just able to a couple weeks ago. But
But
it's that
just before we get into the
ancient
prehistory,
history, sure.
what do you think drives most people to almost
I think it's just
instinctively,
fear of change.
kind of like what Albert Brooks was talking about in his movie, right?
Um, Fear, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just
It's just
like the devil, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
a lot of people already assume there's no afterlife, so
Mhm.
perhaps they're not as bothered by their exclusion from it.
Right. And I have had people call my bluff and be like, "No, you just think you would say yes. But when the time came, you would absolutely melt." You know what I mean?
Yeah, could be.
Because it would be harder, I think, to pull the trigger than to just be like, "Yeah, of course you got to go to the afterlife." Like you to pull the trigger on potential eternal damnation, it's tough, man.
Yeah, but I mean, what is an infinity of damnation compared to? No, damn it, what is it? There's a Baudelaire quote here that's like, well, yeah, what is an eternity of damnation compared to an infinity of pleasure in a single second, right? The idea that like you might have such an amazing charge in that
Mhm.
moment of choice, get so much joy that it would
Yes. Point.
outweigh cosmically an infinitude of damnation. It's from the Bad Glazier, one of the greatest prose poems ever written.
See, listeners, I should have asked 2 years ago. This is one of the best responses I've heard yet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I have to say, unlike you, I don't think I was bedeviled so much by the afterlife as a kid.
Mhm.
I was bedeviled by other paradoxes, such as a big one that I had growing up was, what if somebody, some god or all powerful being, is just constantly stopping time for tens of millions of years and then restarting it, and then we just never know, Feel like we've been little do we know we've been frozen for like the equivalent, but when time has stopped, has time passed? Is it just like weird stuff like that? I
I
used
think
to.
this is like a pretty good illustration of the different planes we were on as
Well,
children.
I don't know. I used to lay in bed at night worrying about this and like thinking about various time travel paradoxes.
Was this when you were being introduced to comic books and stuff?
Yeah, comic books more. I think I associate this even more with like philosophically oriented sci-fi novels. Like,
Mhm.
I was probably in about fifth or sixth grade, maybe a little younger, thinking
Yeah.
about this stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think comic books probably right. Some Galactus like being coming down and
Mhm.
stopping time. I had a few other ones I think of, but they're not. I used to think of, but they're not coming to mind at the moment. Yeah, I mean, that's a fun brain teaser. I mean, is that even really what that is? I don't know. I like it.
But let's go all the way back
All
to the
right,
beginning.
so we're talking about the prehistoric era. when you think of prehistory, Michael, what does that bring to your mind?
Well, would you say before clocks?
Before clocks, yes.
Yeah,
Um,
what I would probably say. Don't
but
you need some sort of
before clocks, but what
time?
else? What other time mechanisms are there? Calendars before calendars. But the
Yeah.
prehistoric people probably had some kind of calendar, right? I mean, they moved around. They were often nomadic. They would move at certain times of the year. You can sort of tell time by the seasons, even if, or by the like
Sure.
changing amount of light, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, Mainly by prehistory, I
What
think.
is it actually defined as prehistory?
Well, I think it's kind of loose, but for me, it
Before
means
language?
not language before writing, right? Before we have like narratives that people have told us about themselves, right?
Okay, so first with language, they're just communicating. They're living in the moment,
That's
shall we
right.
say?
That's right.
Yeah.
As far as we know, I mean,
And eventually, they were like, "Someone's going to want to hear about this."
I think more important, more likely, people were like, I need to remember how many sheep I just traded
Yeah.
Alcazar or whatever, you know, like,
And why does he have to have such a hard name to spell while I'm trying to figure out how to write?
yeah. Well, I think the first writing was probably just like lines, you know, 1, 2, 3, like tally systems. And indeed, that is borne out. Like the earliest writing is, for the most part, not literary, but economic, right?
Mhm.
People making records of I sold 12 bushels of wheat to so and so. They gave me 3 cows, you know, keeping track of like who owes what to whom.
So from there to start getting into things that we may be able to intimate it
Well, I
a
mean, but
after, like
before,
how much time are we talking?
I mean, the first writing that we know of is from around 3000 BC. So it's about 5,000 years old, maybe a little older in some places, in Mesopotamia. And there's this like proto script in Romania that's a little older that
Hmm.
no one's been able to decipher. But we're talking about a long time ago. But for the purposes of this episode, we're talking way before even that.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, because it's not that one thing I should correct about what I just said is like writing is an important innovation, but storytelling vastly predates writing, right?
Right.
Like people were, there was this thing called the oral tradition, right? Where tales are
Mhm.
passed down and then someday maybe they get written down, but probably for the 100,000 plus, you know, year history of the human race, think of how many stories have been lost, right? That maybe were preserved in some cases for thousands of years through tribal groups and the retelling of stories, and then eventually that group got wiped out. Their stories got wiped out with them, right? So it's not to say the earliest people were not narratively sophisticated and didn't have stories they told themselves. They just didn't have any way of capturing these stories in a form that's discernible to us,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's like that must have been kind of nice. Like if we could go back to that, I think it might be good for us.
Well,
Like
we may
the
whether
oral tradition could like forget Fast and Furious 6. You know, the culture might be
yeah, I mean, it's happened before, right? I mean,
yeah.
writing has developed and been forgotten. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but like the Greeks, for instance, in the Bronze Age, the Minoans and the Mycenaean Greeks had sophisticated writing systems. The Mycenaean script we have deciphered, which is called Linear B. You can read it.
Mhm.
It's largely, again, tabulations, keeping track of who owes what to whom. We don't have too much literary content from those scripts. But there's a period from like, we talked about this in the Bronze Age collapse episode a long time ago, but like from around 1200 BC to around 700 BC, there's no writing in Greece. They forgot how to write. The Bronze Age collapse catastrophe happened, and the ability to write was lost.
Maybe they were just spending too much time on their phones.
Yeah, that's during the Chat GPT era of ancient Greek culture. Um,
Just some guy in like 900 being like, there's just no critical thinking anymore.
I mean, you know, those people have existed forever, right? I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you know, Socrates was probably well, Socrates was saying that about, you know, the sophists, and then later
Hmm.
people were saying it about Socrates, right? I mean, it's the next generation is always skeptical of the generation that follows it, or whatever,
Right.
right? Or vice versa. So we're talking about way before this. We're talking about the earliest humans, and the earliest humans go back hundreds of thousands of years. And in some cases, we're talking about humans, hominins, which is to say, human-like beings that aren't even necessarily fully Homo sapien in our modern sense of it. So we're talking about our cousins, people like Neanderthal and Denisovan. Are you familiar with
what's Denisovan?
All right, well, this is the hot new subspecies of humanity. It's only emerged in the last 15 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2010 is when the first Denisovan remain. I think some people say Denisovan. Maybe that's more eloquent. I don't know.
Well,
Elegant.
we've only had a decade and a half to sort out the
pronunciation.
pronunciation.
Yeah. They're so new that they aren't even like a fully formalized group. But
there's just whispers in the community.
No, they found their bones. They found their DNA. They've tested them. They even found just last year, in the last year, they found a skull in China, a full skull, the upper half of the skull of a Denisovan. And it is, what's that?
Huge skull? Giant? Small?
It's big. It's the biggest skull ever found of a human. It's longer than any other human skull. It has these huge ridges on its brow. Like they had massive like brows above their eyes, really big eyes, really big nose, really big mouth. But brain size, basically identical to modern humans. So when you think of Neanderthal, like what does that bring to mind for you?
I mean, isn't that like the idea is that they're like slower and more dim-witted than humans?
I think that's the stereotype, but
more like simpler, right?
We don't
kind of like a doyoy vibe, right?
Yeah.
God, you're such a Neanderthal. No one ever says like
it says
wow, that he is just such a Neanderthal.
It's true. But there's really no reason to think that. Like, for all we know, Neanderthal were just as sophisticated as modern humans. They had a different body type. They were stockier.
Is this just like millennia of like generational like subconscious racism that's like been passed down?
We haven't even known about them for that long, right? I mean, the first ones are found in like the 1800s, right?
Right. So by virtue of the fact that they're not around, we're just like, oh, they must have been really stupid.
Well, they went extinct. So the implication is that we were better. So we killed them, probably because we were smarter. When in point of fact, that's not entirely true.
I would say modern history bears out that the best and brightest do not always emerge.
No, certainly not. And also, like 5% of my DNA is Neanderthal, right? If you're Western European, you're like 5% Neanderthal. Yeah.
Okay.
And we know that because of DNA, right? We can sequence their DNA, we can sequence ours. And if you're Asian, probably a similar amount of your DNA is Denisovan.
Okay.
So the skull that I was talking about was found in Harbin in China, which is in kind of Manchuria, north China, close to Korea, close to Siberia. Mm-hmm. And There've also been finds found in other parts of China. The Denisova cave, where the first Denisovan was found, is in Siberia, a little bit further to the west than China. But DNA haplotype groupings have basically confirmed that the ones found in China and this one are from the same species.
And when you're saying found in a cave, was this a burial of some sort, or how did that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, very possibly. Right, we can't be sure, but this comes down to like the first conceptions of the afterlife have to do with ceremonial burial, right? And
what do you mean?
Well, like you're burying a person who's dead, and you're usually burying them with stuff, with grave goods.
Okay, and so the point is,
what that imply? What's that?
The very act of even burying suggests some value system, otherwise they could just be left to rot, right?
Well, right. And also the idea of burying them with stuff implies that they're going to use the stuff in some next phase of their existence, right?
What would they be buried with?
One example is hand axes. These are like the peak technological item of the Neolithic and Paleolithic.
And assumed kind of hard to make too,
incredibly hard to make. Like took thousands of hours of chipping away at flint to shape this, and they found a lot of these, and they're incredibly sharp and useful. They were used for cutting things, presumably in some cases perhaps used in hunting, but these were like the pinnacle tool of this culture, the Stone Age.
Well, it's fascinating. So it's like they're either symbolically advanced enough to like do this out of reverence or ritual, or they genuinely think the dead would use the axe.
Exactly. Like, well, what's he going to do when he gets to whatever their belief?
Both of those things suggest a sort of higher plane of thinking than.
Well, right. I mean, the thing to remember about ancient peoples is that they were just as sophisticated as we are, right? Mm. Like their brains were just like ours. Like we haven't.
When you're talking about the earliest ceremonial burials, what type of time frame?
Well, 40 to 50,000 years ago are the ones that we found, but like this, the Denisovan was probably 150,000 years ago.
Wow.
Now, we don't know if that was a ceremonial burial in the cave. It's called the Denisova cave because a hermit named Denis lived there in the Middle Ages. He himself was unfortunately not a Denisovan, but and there's also evidence that Neanderthal at different points also lived in that cave, right? So caves seem to have some kind of significance, which also implies with burial some kind of belief in an afterlife that involves being underground, right? And the Greeks had a term for this. It could be hell, but it could also be more neutral. Okay. The Greek word for this much later would be chthonic, C-T-H-O-N-I-C, which is like, it just means like in the earth, right? And this has to do with like rootedness and like returning to the place, because the Greeks had a lot of beliefs about people springing out of the ground, as like that's where they came from. It was their sort of idea of indigeneity. Like, I'm an Athenian, and that means that my ancestors literally like grew up out of the earth here in Athens. Right. So returning people to the earth has a significance that perhaps implies, and again, a lot of the stuff I'm going to be saying in this episode is like highly speculative because we have no way of confirming it. But basically, yeah. So I mean, Neanderthals, Denisovans, early humans, they all seem to have had some form of ceremonial burial. They all engaged in another important art that we can associate with caves, particularly that is, namely the creation of cave art, right? You ever watch that Herzog documentary, The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, Michael?
No.
Really? You should, yeah. It's awesome. He goes to this cave, which is at in France, or maybe it's in Spain. It's like in the Pyrenees, I think. Chauvet Cave. And it's one of these caves that has Paleolithic art that's 40, 50, maybe even 100,000 years old in some cases. Maybe not 100,000, but very old. And this was undisturbed again until very recently. I think some school children were fooling around and like kicked a hole in the wall. And
right.
A lot of these caves that were these sacred sites were deliberately closed up by the people that created them. This is a theme that we'll see recurring when we get to Göbekli Tepe in a little bit. But like, basically, they created art in these caves, and if you go in and look at them, it's unbelievable. Like,
what are they drawing?
Primarily animals. Like in the Forgotten Dreams documentary, you can see the animals. I mean, they also did their own hands a lot. What they would do is they take the
kind of like a very early version of like Michael Was Here vibes?
Possibly, right? They had, what we think they did was they had these like hollowed out reeds that were filled with pigment, and they'd put their hand up against the wall of the cave and then like blow the pigment around to kind of do an outline of the hand.
Maybe the cave was a jail and they were doing fingerprints.
Maybe.
Like, you're Mr. Denisovan, you're going to be here a very long time.
You're under arrest, right?
You're going to serve 10,000 consecutive life sentences.
Most of those will be as a skeleton, but never mind. So the animals are, sometimes people are drawn, but by far the more common subject matter seems to be animals.
And what's the thinking there? Why is it thought that that's
I think they're venerating the animals, that these are the animals that they were dependent upon. These are hunter-gatherer peoples, right? So, and you can see animals.
And that's not even just the afterlife. It's a sense of like calling some sort of spiritual protection to get more bison or whatever.
Could be, right? Or it could be a idealized picture of an afterlife where these animals are super.
Or they just think they're cute. I mean, how many pictures do you have of your cats? You know what I mean?
That's true. Although when the dead ones come up on my phone now, and it makes me sad, but I get over that, and I'm able to appreciate the time we had together, even though they're now gone. They're venerating the animals. Could be a prayer for continued availability. could be a way of thanking the animals. And the animals are really well done. Like, and these are done for memory, right? Because it's not like it's not like a bunch of cavemen are like holding a bison
sitting out there with an easel
as
and
the
a
artist is
beret
sketching it.
a croissant.
Like, right. But they're incredibly detailed and sophisticated. And also they do a lot of extinct animals, like the European lion. Like there were lions running around Europe in the Ice Age, and like, so you look at these and they're, woolly mammoths and things like that, right? Creatures that don't even exist anymore, that are captured in vivid detail. We haven't found clear examples of this yet, but it's probably likely that Denisovans and Neanderthal also made cave art. Another interesting object that was found around 40,000, that's from around 40,000 years ago, but was discovered in Germany around Munich in the 1930s, is this totem, which is called the Löwenmensch, or the Lion Man. And it's
not in a cave.
What's that?
This is in a cave as well, or
no? I think this was found, or maybe it was found in. I think it was found in a cave, actually.
Okay. What is it?
It's a totem. It's a tiny little statue, but it is the oldest statue ever found, and it is carved out of mammoth tusk, and it is about 40,000 years old, which is so it's made of ivory, like an ivory.
Wow.
I don't have much experience with actual ivory in my life, seeing as it's heavily illegal. But I've seen a few objects of ivory. Ivory is incredibly hard, right? I mean, you can imagine like an elephant tusk, right? You don't want that like stabbing you, for instance. It's the body of a man or woman. There's scholarly debate about what gender the person is. For a while, it was assumed it was a man, but they literally went back to the cave and like sifted more and found some more pieces of it just in the last 10 years or so.
Wow.
And now they're like, oh, are those breasts? Like, I think those are breasts, right? So they're like, but the gender of it's not totally
breasts,
clear.
Are they man boobs? These are the questions that are plaguing current day historians.
It's a humanoid body with the head of an animal, which seems to kind of point towards some idea of human-animal hybridity. There's some cave paintings that are like this too. There's one, forgetting which cave it's from, but it's called the Sorcerer, and it's kind of like a deer body, but it has like human. It's almost like a centaur, kind of like, except instead of being a horse, it's a deer.
Is this implicating or getting at some sort of reincarnation, or
that's kind of what I'm wondering? Is like, is the totem, again, like an imagined vision of the next stage of life?
Yeah, or like, is it celebrating their leader? Maybe.
Could be a symbol. Could it be a fertility totem? A sort of some kind of sexual ritual was involved in this.
Could it just be a guy who was like, this will be something nuts?
Is it an early furry, right? I mean, is that what you're like? Maybe, right?
I always love the idea with the conversations like this, that it could also just be like one guy who just was like, I'm going to make a sculpture of a lion man.
Yeah, I mean,
what else am I doing in my time? I'm in this cave all day.
Well, I don't think they lived in the caves, right? I mean, we can tell. Another cool thing about the cave stuff is like there isn't smoke residue that dates to the time of the painting. So
smoking inside is disgusting. Always has been.
Well, not. I mean, like from torches to like so they could see what they were doing. So it's like kind of unclear how they like saw what they were painting.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, one possibility is the caves were much more open,
right,
and there was more sunlight got in ancient times. Another possibility is they used some kind of phosphorescent lighting, like a glowing moss or something, right? I mean, that does exist, but it's a mystery because you'd expect. And the other thing about the painting is the paintings are done in these caves over thousands of years. So there'll be a painting on one side that's from 38,000 years ago. And then just a little ways down, there'll be one from 24,000 years ago. So it's like 14,000 years later.
And it's that close in proximity.
They're right next to each other. Yeah. Or just like across the way.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So I think when we think about like how dramatic.
You can't even make a car anymore that lasts 30 years,
Or much less 14,000, right?
That's right.
When you think about how much progress there's been in the last 50 years, and then you hear that there was like 14,000 years between relatively similar. I mean, there are differences, but there isn't like a, bicycle to motorcycle kind of leap in that 14,000 year span.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, it's hard to even conceive of that slow of a movement of human expression, right?
Right. I mean, 14, how many generations is 14,000 years? It's like hundreds of generations.
Yeah.
And the population in total on the earth is much smaller at this point, right? So it's just kind of amazing that people, and as I said, like, the reason we find these caves is that they're often boarded up at some point. Someone at some point, some chieftain or shaman figure is like, that's it. Cave is done. Time to board it up.
No more cave.
Yeah, or find a new cave,
Yeah.
So, but it's crazy to think for 14,000 years the cave is cool, and then suddenly something happens. They board
maybe
it up.
some sort of disaster, or they had to leave the area, right?
Could be, and but they took the time and effort to pile rocks in an enormous amount to make sure no one else
to protect either keep people out or protect what they had drawn or done in the cave.
Right, and in some cases, people are buried in these caves. So the proximity of the art and of the things like the Lion Man statue,
right, are these early tombs?
Well, that's what I'm saying. No, they aren't tombs in the sense of you open up a tomb, you bury a guy, you close the tomb up, right? Because it was open for thousands of years.
Oh, right. Okay.
But at some point, it got closed off. We'll talk about this more in a second. I mean, another, like, the idea here is like ancestor worship. That there seems to have been some belief that when your relatives died, they transformed into either, if not gods, kind of supernatural guiding spirits capable of aiding you, right? That needed to be venerated, that needed to be kept in mind. And this goes along with,
maybe that's the reason that things stayed so consistent. Maybe they felt like those spirits needed to recognize what they were seeing, even perhaps.
Interesting. So,
right, like the idea of keeping these traditions had a very real impact on the way that these spirits can guide you, maybe.
I think that's interesting. Yeah. We see this in the earlier and much later times when people start to build houses and live in very early kind of settled domiciles. In Mesopotamia, people would bury their dead within the floor of the home.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's like grandma dies.
Well,
they bury it deep. I mean,
uh-huh.
Bunch of feet of clay or whatever.
I see.
And then as you do this over generations, the house like rises up because you're like, all right, we got to knock the roof off. We got to expand because there's 7 generations buried under.
Grandpa died. Yeah.
Well, Grandpa's
kids. Bad news. We're moving upstairs.
Basically. Another time, if there's a yard available, the dead would be buried there instead. What this implies is that having the dead nearby was important.
Right. Like the idea is, at the very least, it mattered for some reason, which in a sense is really what we're ultimately talking about, right? Is that like these are the first signs of death having sort of, that we know of, people expressing value and meaning to the act of dying. What we can say about their belief in the afterlife is a little more speculative, but by virtue of doing any of these things, they are showing an importance beyond just like, oh, this guy died, leave him, let's keep walking.
That's right. I mean, and this is like the earliest thing that differentiates humans from most other animal species. Some animals have reverence for the dead. There's the old myth about elephant graveyards, that like an old elephant, as it's getting ready to die, will like go to a specific place where all of its ancestors go and die. This isn't true. This is just a sort of urban, well, I guess, jungle legend about the behavior of elephants, brought on by the fact that elephants have been seen revisiting the spots where a beloved family member died and like touching the bones with their trunks and stuff like that. And like they seem to have some concept of like, this was someone I cared about. But most other animal species uh, when an animal dies, they're just like, okay, like they
Right.
don't have a concept of it. So
Well, should we go to the headliner here? What's it called? How do you pronounce it?
Göbekli Tepe? Yeah,
Fascinating.
Göbekli Tepe rules. So we're getting a little closer to modernity here. Göbekli Tepe is in eastern Turkey near the city of Urfa, which is right over the border with Syria. And Urfa, Sanliurfa, is one of the oldest cities in the world. It's where Abraham in the Bible came from. Abraham's like he's one
Ever
of the
heard of him?
yeah he's one of the old heads. He's like post Noah, but only just right. Like again, we're talking about something that was discovered very recently. Göbekli Tepe, I think, was found in 1995, 96.
And what time frame are we talking about that they've determined?
Well, Göbekli Tepe is a large ceremonial place, kind of like Stonehenge, but cooler, I would say.
Describe it. Give a sense of the size and what it looks like.
They're basically these circles. The image from this week's episode on the icon is one of the T's from Göbekli Tepe that I've done a rendering of.
Maybe we can leave something in the comment, like a link to like what this place looks like, because it is crazy.
Yeah, it's these circles of large T-shaped stones that are taller than a human, and they seem to have been representations of humans. The T's, I think, are meant to represent the arms. Maybe there was like a skull on the top that represented the head or something. We'll talk about skull cults in a minute, but basically,
or some really ham-handed cross, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is too thick. We got to get thinner. Try wood.
Yeah, it was like a anticipation of JC.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the cool part about it is though is that this is the oldest ceremonial site yet discovered, and it's from around 10 to 12,000 years old. So we're talking about
it's still way back,
like like thousands and
when
thousands.
Was Stonehenge?
Stonehenge is pretty old. Stonehenge, I think, is from like 2300, 2400 BC. So that's like 4,500 years old. But this is like twice or three times as old.
Okay, very cool.
And also, it's been excavated. It was discovered by this professor Schmidt in the 90s. And what's interesting is we see the animal motif recur on a lot of these stone T's, and they're arranged in a circle, and there are a ton of them. They've only excavated some tiny percentage of the sites that are at this site, and do
we have some sense of the scale of the distance that this thing covers?
Many acres, and it's was in use for thousands of years. So, say 10,000 BC. No, a little earlier than that, even 11,000 to 8,000, something like that.
Okay.
And so different generations of people would come here, and on each of the T's, different animals are carved. And you have animals like a scorpion. There's a really cool scorpion on some. There's a kind of wolf on some. What
do we think? What do they think this was for?
Well, it's some kind of religious site, obviously, and people would visit it annually or semi-annually, and
like a pilgrimage type thing.
Exactly, because
so people didn't live on site.
They did not, because this is pre-agriculture. These stone T's were constructed before the domestication.
So they're semi-nomadic, and they're coming back to this place over and over again.
And they're also big enough that they have hundreds of people capable of working on putting these massive stone objects together. And
they're probably setting up temporary camps to build this stuff.
Right.
It's
and
incredibly impressive.
Coming back generation after generation, too, because there are just hundreds of these stone T's, many of which, as I said, have not been excavated.
And this could be for something like keeping like like you said, like a
calendar, like we go back here this time.
Yeah, or like some sort of veneration to protect like their ability to get food and survive. Absolutely. It doesn't necessarily have to be about dying, right?
And interestingly, the first strain, DNA has shown the first strain of wheat ever domesticated is from here. It's from like right around where Göbekli Tepe is.
Like just down the street.
Yeah, basically. So
what?
Yeah, because like Mesopotamia is where agriculture, at least as far as we know so far, originated, right?
Which
Like
is an interesting question. Then it is like their need to be in proximity enough to this place. Could that have led to the pressing need to start, agriculture as we know it, right?
exactly. Um, for a long time, I think it was assumed that agriculture, the development of a sustainable source of food, was the thing that led to the construction of large ceremonial things like Göbekli Tepe. But
Okay.
Göbekli Tepe shows no, like religion precedes agriculture.
That's like a fascinating
It's
find.
it's amazing, right?
It's sort of mind blowing
Oh yeah, this
because it is always the notion that like once humans were able to settle down in some relative sense, then like a man could really get some thinking done.
right,
But instead, you're saying they're looking up to the sky and they're looking down to the ground and they're looking into caves long before
way
they
before,
were settled at all.
way
Yeah.
before. And in fact, the opposite turns out to be true. I mean, I long believed what you just said to be exactly right, but evidence now shows that like the earliest domesticated people who lived as farmers instead of hunter gatherers like had worse teeth, were smaller, had shorter lives, and the people who stayed as hunter gatherers were like, look at these idiots over there in the town, like
I guess that does get like when you think about it now, it's like think about all of the like even with how easy like our lives are now, how much that ease plagues people. Sedentary lifestyles lead to
cancer,
obesity, death.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's
kind of an interesting through line that like
which is why we are moving to a Maha village in
yeah, because well, I mean, you think they were just getting 10,000 steps in? Come on.
No, right? 10,000 BC steps. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they were doing there. I mean, and the other thing is there are not a lot of burials at Göbekli itself. Found a few fragments of skulls, but this wasn't a graveyard.
Did you already say where in the world this is?
Yeah, it's Sanliurfa. It's like Mesopotamia, but in contemporary Turkey, as we must now call it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some skull fragments. This reminds us of a little bit of the last thing we'll talk about, which is the skull cult. This ties back into like ancestor worship. And skull cults, a cult of a skull, where after a person would die, you dry out the body, you get off the skin or have vultures eat it or whatever it was, and you take the skull and then you like plaster over the skull, and like you'd use seashells for the new eyes and then you put this up, and this
you're tricking out the skull.
Yeah, but it's like someone you knew most likely, and then that would
it's like this is Bill.
Yeah. This
is my friend Bill. And
this is Dad or whoever, right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
And then you'd worship them. These are in the same area, from Neolithic to Göbekli Tepe era sites, from Iraq to central Turkey, and even in Jericho, which is one of the oldest civilizations from the Bible, from contemporary Israel, that there have been skulls found with these. The skulls are really freaky. Like, it's like we're gonna worship these skulls.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes me as a little macabre, right? To have Dad's skull like paint, and they were probably painted too, right? Like the paint likely hasn't survived. Yeah. What do we know? What could we take away from all of this? Like, well, as I said before, the ancients venerated the dead. They thought that what happened to your body after you died mattered. Mm-hmm. And they had some connection between animals and the divine, right? Whether it meant transforming into animals or ensuring animals would carry over into the next life. I mean, we'll talk about Egypt in a couple weeks, but the Egyptians mummified crocodiles. You can go find, right? I mean, this idea, they mummified cats. Speaking of beloved past pets, right? I mean, it's
but even like this type of length of time ago, there is some strong suggestion that when it came to the afterlife, people were already saying kind of like, so you're saying there's a chance,
for sure.
And in a way, the veneration or protection of the dead is like almost like, well, if we don't know what happens, we should probably take care of these people to give them a chance. Here's an axe, right? Like here's a decoration of your skull that will appeal to the spirits or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
It's about protecting those people. Not necessarily, we don't know that they like believed that something happened, but there's a suggestion that
I think they did believe something happened, right? I mean, clearly.
Right, but I'm saying even
we don't know
short of
what it was.
A suggestion that the care that they took in the dead suggested that they were at least not saying, well, we know that nothing happens, because otherwise they could just leave them.
Just like chuck the thigh bone out with with dinner or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's good for prehistory. I mean, again, a lot of it's speculative. We don't know, and
but it's kind of makes for a more fun conversation. There's like, what could this be?
Yeah.
Because the exciting thing is, it is something, even if it is just a guy in a cave carving away a lion man for fun.
Yeah. I mean, that people were doing that 42,000 years ago or whatever is like wild. So we're gonna keep up on this same thread next time. And we're going to transition over to the historic era of Mesopotamia and talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a book I taught for.
It's epic.
It's an epic. It's one of the oldest tales ever recorded, and it is literally about the fear of death, and about the fear of the afterlife. Like that is what it is about. So I'm looking forward to that. As I said before, you can follow us on podcatcher of your choice. Like, subscribe, recommend, etc. But until next time, this has been the end of the world with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu. And we'll talk to you real soon.